Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into Machine Minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Russ, founder and CEO of LiveKit. Thanks for being on the show today, Russ.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you so much. It's amazing to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so glad we've got this on the schedule. And for anyone watching the video of this on YouTube, we have a baseball cap episode today. Both Russ and I have a cap on, so got the swag out. All right, let's jump into it. So look, before founding LiveKit, I want to take a step back. And you founded several companies. You've had an impressive journey. Can you share some of that background? And you and I have spoken previously also about like your different motivations at different times in your life for being an entrepreneur. So really want to share that with the audience because it was really insightful.
Yeah, I think I tell people sometimes that I've kind of been brainwashed into what I do these days, or starting companies and being in tech. My dad was in tech from when I was a kid, young age, in the semiconductor industry, GPUs, DSL, and networking infrastructure and flash storage and all that stuff. And so I've seen him go through all these waves of technology across like the 80s and the 90s, and I think I think his excitement about technology and starting companies and working on things, futuristic types of things, that was inspiring for me. I kind of his excitement was infectious, and so I right out of college I went and I started a company. I found out about this thing called Y Combinator when it had kind of just about started, and I think they started in 2005, and we were in the fifth batch in 2007 that summer. And so I started my first company in YC right after I was getting out of college, and across my career, I've kind of moved in these waves where like I'll kind of join a company, I'll start a company and then I'll join a company, and then I'll start a company and then I'll join a company. And I think there are a few different reasons for that. I mean, of course, after working on something for a while, you maybe get a bit tired and you want to change a pace or work on a new idea. And so, joining a company is a great way to do that. I think also at the same time, when you're working on a company, you tend to be really heads down and kind of have tunnel vision on that problem that you're going and trying to solve. And you don't really see what else is happening out there in the world. And so you kind of become blind to some of the other problems that are out there that you can be solving. And so I think joining a company is a nice way to kind of take a step back. You see kind of problems that the company you've joined is solving, but also at a macro level, what other people are doing in industry, and it kind of gets your creativity going a little bit, and you get the new idea or the new spark to go work on something else. And so that's kind of been my sort of sine wave like kind of cadence across my career. But also, yeah, the motivation for doing this has changed as well across, the different decades that I've been alive or been interested in this stuff. Like I think in my late teenage years and early 20s, it was about kind of getting rich, I think. Or rather, sorry, in my late teens and 20s, I think I grew up like idolizing folks like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and those were back in that day, that was like our Elon and et cetera. And so I wanted to be famous and change the world with like technology. I think I also was really inspired by John Carmack and John Romero, how they created Doom and Quake and id Software as a gaming company by taking computers like out of their office that they worked in a truck back home, and then like working on their game using those computers, and then taking the machines back to work the next day. And so I think that just, being two people in a garage, being able to change the world by writing words on the screen is like such an inspirational thing. And that's really what it was about for me in my like early 20s, was I want to be famous and I want to be known for doing something as impactful as those folks and that I looked up to. And then it kind of evolved towards, okay, well, I'm in my early 30s now. I need money. I need to be rich. Like, and maybe if I'm rich, then I can go and I can like buy Pixar, or I can like acquire Tesla or something like that. And, I can, maybe I need to be rich first, before I can really go out and have that big impact. And then as I got into like my late 30s and now, I'm 41. So definitely been around for a while. I realized that like I can work on something and still have an impact and not have to be optimizing for like money or fame. Like that stuff is kind of just it's temporary, and it's also just a bonus. It's like, what is the thing that really matters? It's positively affecting the world and making an impact in that way, and leaving something, building something greater than yourself, I think, and moving humanity forward, I think, is something that people like to say. And it's true though. And so, yeah, I mean, that the kernel of that really was formed when I started LiveKit, because it started as an open source project. It wasn't even meant to be a company. And then right when we launched it, I think maybe like 3 weeks later, 911 emergency services, there was a company that was going and putting software in dispatch centers all around the country. And they were putting LiveKit in these dispatch centers. And, 3 weeks after we started to we launched the open source project. And that was my realization where I was like, okay, wow, I worked on this thing and I can have this huge impact on the world. And it's not even a company. And yes, it did become a company, or it became a company, but I was able to do the thing that I ultimately wanted to do since I was young, without having to have these other kind of priors beforehand that needed to be satisfied. So
interesting. I mean, it shows like a very mature and evolved sense of purpose, right? Because I think a lot of people can relate to the fame or the money, or some people just do it for the title, right? I want to be CEO founder, but don't understand what's all of that. But then when you take a step back and you're looking at the bigger picture, you gain that clarity. But that comes with time.
It does come with time. It's one of those things where I don't, sometimes I'll talk to like young entrepreneurs, and they'll ask me about my journey. I'll ask them about theirs. And if I ever hear about like, oh, I really want to have a company worth $1 billion, or I want to make $1 billion, or whatever it is, right? Like there's no shame from me, like, because I've been there. Like I had to go through the motions and like learn along the way about myself, to really kind of arrive at this point where I feel like now I truly know what I want to do. And you just kind of, we all kind of go at our own pace and learn these things, over time. And yeah, it's kind of how I think the world works, how it is to be a human being in this world, right? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really insightful. No one's shared that previously on the show. So I know our listeners will get a lot from that. So before we dive deeper into LiveKit and just the company and et cetera, can you give the audience an overview of what you guys actually do?
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned that LiveKit it started off as an open source project, and it still is an open source project, but it just started as that. It wasn't a company at first. And the open source project, like what it is infrastructure that allows you to build an application that leverages real-time streaming audio or video in that application. Another way that I kind of like to explain it to people is that if you took all of Zoom's technology, not the application itself, but the technology underneath that underpins it, that allows you to instantly connect with someone anywhere in the world with your voice and your likeness over a video being captured by a camera. If you take that technology underneath and you made it into an API that any developer could take that technology and build any other kind of application with it. Yeah, you could build your own version of Zoom, sure. But there's a lot of other things you can use that technology for. The core of that technology is being able to take information from any camera, information from any microphone, and being able to transport it anywhere else in the world. So photons of light that get digitized into binary ones and zeros, and vibrations in the air that get digitized into ones and zeros. And you're teleporting that information anywhere in the world and being able to replay it or reconstitute that information back through a screen and through a mic, through a speaker on someone else's computer or phone, etc. And it's like you're there with them. And that kind of teleportation technology, we build the infrastructure that makes it really easy for any developer to use and leverage in an application that they're building.
Very cool. And, you know, as you mentioned, you guys are obviously known for that real-time communication capabilities, but what makes your technology unique compared to competitors, or for anyone else listening to this, be like, oh, I'm sure there's other things that I can use or have used in the past?
Yeah, I'd say that the interesting thing about, I think that there's kind of two ways to think about it in terms of relative comparisons to other things. We started in the middle of the pandemic. And during the pandemic, everyone was reaching for technology like this because we couldn't leave our houses. So like we had to sit, at home and connect with everybody over through a computer, right? We couldn't see anybody in person. And so what was interesting about that time was for the last 10 years of cameras and microphones and being able to stream your audio and video is not a new thing. That technology has been around for about 12 years now or so, or even longer, but 12 years in kind of a mainstream across every browser, every phone, kind of widely supported across every type of device, about 12 years. And in that time, we've really only used the technology for having business meetings. Like it was Blue Jeans and WebEx and Zoom.
Wow, I forgot.
Yeah, right. Blue Jeans, that's a throwback. Obscure reference, Blue Jeans, but they ended up getting acquired by Verizon, I think, during the pandemic. But so that's what we used it for, was business meetings. And I think when the pandemic hit, we were clamoring for all the different developers were building applications to try to move all these different types of experiences outside of just a business meeting onto the internet, because that was the only option for how to continue doing that activity. Yeah. You had to do it on a computer. And so there just wasn't infrastructure that was flexible to do anything other than a business meeting. I mean, if you look at the stack at that time, like, it's a long story that I won't really tell, and I've told it in other places, but LiveKit, the open source project, started because of a side project that I was working on in 2020. I was working on like a Clubhouse for companies type of project, and it didn't look like a business meeting, and it had different kind of characteristics around like connection speed, and it was audio only, and it needed to handle really large scale, having potentially 1,000 people in a company and in all hands, like doing a casual conversation or et cetera. Like there were these requirements, and it had to be on mobile. And so there were all these requirements that if you look at each one of them individually, the existing infrastructure just did not support it. And it wasn't flexible enough for me to be able to build that application using the existing infrastructure. And so LiveKit was really motivated out of this necessity to have that infrastructure for something that I was working on. I started working on the open source project to support the app that I was trying to build. And I ended up kind of getting a little bit bored with the app, but really interested in the infrastructure, and just decided to continue working on that infrastructure. And so I think that's how it was differentiated from everything else that was out there at the time. There was no open source stack for it. It didn't work. The commercial or competitive efforts didn't work. They didn't work in environments outside of a desktop computer. They didn't handle very large scale, because meetings or gatherings of people or live streams was never something that they needed to handle. They only needed to handle small meetings, right? Like if you look at what Twilio supported at the time, they support, I think it's still the case, 50 people maximum together in a session, and that's not super flexible for anything outside of like having a meeting. And so that was like a differentiator for us at the time. But I think what you've also seen in a macro perspective that has become kind of why does our technology have a unique need, or what is kind of special about it relative to at a 10,000 foot level, how you build applications today. And I think the answer to that is the way that applications are going to work in the future. The internet was not designed for streaming audio and video. I kind of almost hate to use this this explanation, because it sounds so much like the plot for the Silicon Valley TV show, HBO Silicon Valley, because the thing that they're building is they're building a new internet, and the way we kind of are. The thing I didn't talk about was, LiveKit open source project, real-time audio and video infrastructure. There's LiveKit Cloud, which is our commercial hosted version of that open source project. And that is a global network of, real-time media servers that are distributed all around the world. They run 15 data centers all around the world. They kind of form this mesh fabric, and you can connect to that fabric from San Francisco, send your video to Australia over the private internet backbone, and those servers talk to each other. And then when your video hits the Australia server, it gets streamed back out over to the user's phone or wherever they're connected to you from. And so we have this network infrastructure that runs, at scale around the world today. And it really kind of is a new type of internet. Like when you go to a browser and you type in HTTP, that acronym is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It was built for transferring text, not hyper audio or hyper video, right? It was built for transferring text over a network. But with multimodal AI, to give you an example, like as AI gets smarter and smarter, there's this human-computer interaction starts to look a bit more like human interaction. Like humans use eyes, ears, mouths. We're doing that right now to communicate with one another. When you have a human-like computer, what are the eyes of that human-like computer? It's a camera, and the ears are microphones, and the mouth is a speaker. And as the computer gets smarter and more human-like, the way you interface with it becomes more human-like. That's the natural I/O between humans. It's going to be the natural I/O with super smart, AI as well. And how do you carry that information? My video, so the AI can see me, and my voice, so the AI can hear me and understand me. How do you carry that information? What is the nervous system that carries that information to the brain? And that requires a new type of network that was optimized for transferring that data. It's not optimized for transferring text, characters. It's optimized for transferring vibrations in the air and photons of light. And so that's what LiveKit is building, is we're really building both the network infrastructure as open source and the kind of cloud global 99.99% uptime, resilient, deployment of that any developer can hook into and start to like just stream data on.
Cool. Yeah, that is, I mean, I know a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, wow, okay, cool. Makes a ton of sense. And you can see the impact. And you guys are already powering applications for some major names out there. I don't know how much of that you can share, some of those names, or even how some of these partnerships came about. And I know you guys had a big announcement recently.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Can definitely, you can go to our website if you want to see some of the logos, I guess the names, they're on there. There's not a lot I can say about most of them. I mean, there's definitely some that I can talk about that are super interesting, but the one you alluded to, of course, that is always exciting to talk about is OpenAI. We power, if you've interacted with their voice mode previously, now it's called advanced voice, and it is much more advanced based on that GPT-4o demo that they showed back in May. We power all of that. We're the network layer, or the transport layer that is really carrying the information from a user's device to GPT-4o or GPT-4 before it, and then carrying that speech that is generated by the model back to the device. Or when you share an image or you turn on your video in the demos they've shown, that computer vision aspect or the video data coming from your phone travels over LiveKit's network, where it arrives at the AI model, OpenAI's model, and then of course it consumes that information, understands it, thinks about it a bit, and then gives you a response that comes out, and that response then travels over LiveKit's network back to the device. So that nervous system analogy, that we kind of are that piece in the stack for ChatGPT and their multimodal features, and yeah, the way that that came together was really interesting. They were, I had built a demo back in I think GPT-3 had come out, and GPT-3 was the first time for me where once it came out in the ChatGPT app, that's when it really, got on my radar, and I tried it and I was like, wow, this thing's like pretty good. I remember GPT-2 being like pretty terrible. And this thing is convincingly texting with me like a human, but what if I could talk to it instead? Like, I think a lot of people had this idea, which was, what if I could build Samantha from her? And so I prototyped this demo where instead of kind of doing the traditional path of like record my audio locally, upload it, wait for it to get converted into text, pipe it through the LLM, have the LLM spit out text, and then take that full text and then generate an audio file from it, and then send the audio file down to the device and then play the audio file out like an MP3 or something. Instead of doing that whole thing, what if you used LiveKit's infrastructure to kind of just stream the bytes and process everything in this streaming sort of fashion to cut down on the latency? And so I built this demo, and, despite working there, I never went viral on Twitter when I tweeted about it. But a few months later, OpenAI had been, wanting to build a voice mode. They had, or a voice interface to ChatGPT. They'd been working on a speech synthesis model, and they were now like really interested in kind of exploring the next paradigm of computing. And they found LiveKit as part of their, looking for, how would this thing get built and what should I use? I should use WebRTC, which is the protocol that LiveKit is built on top of. And there's this company called LiveKit, and they build this infrastructure, and it's open source. And so they started to work with it, and then we started to talk and compare notes, and then work together for the last year or so. And I was just thinking about this because Dev Day just happened, and OpenAI, in partnership with us, we both released kind of the two components that allow any developer now to build their own version of advanced voice.
Really?
Yes, the first half of it is on the back end piece. Like the first half of it is being able to have a real time interface to GPT-4o, and so the real time API that OpenAI put out, that kind of WebSocket interface on the back end is your low latency connection to GPT-4o or any future multimodal model, where from a server you stream audio, can stream video, images, text, you can stream all the things, and the model can actually respond with any combination of those as well, streaming out from the model. And so that's kind of like back-end server to model. That's the real-time API piece from OpenAI. And then in advanced voice, you take like that server connection, that's WebSocket, and you bridge it to WebRTC to deliver information from the server to the client. The reason that you have to do this bridging between WebSocket and WebRTC is because WebSocket wasn't built for transferring media. It wasn't designed for high bandwidth streaming of media from a server to a client. It works fine for server to server because the private internet backbone doesn't have network congestion. It's not like a busy road system at rush hour. But the internet from the internet backbone down to any device, computer, a computer, a desktop or a mobile phone or a Vision Pro or anything like that, that path from server to the client device, that is like a congested road system, and it's dynamic, and you have to go through many routers and ISPs and all of this stuff to get there. And so WebRTC was a protocol that was designed to handle that and be resilient to those situations. WebSocket wasn't. And so the way you use LiveKit in this kind of pairing is you have that WebSocket, real-time API from OpenAI from server to the model. And then from server to the client, you use LiveKit. You have a LiveKit agent on the back end. You have a LiveKit SDK in your app on the front end. And those things are forming this WebRTC connection. And the data goes from model to LiveKit over LiveKit's network, and then to the client device where it's played out or, rendered on the screen. And so, we launched this a few days ago, and it's just been amazing response from developers who are building all kinds of really exciting things and exploring the capabilities of this new real-time interface to a natively multimodal model, meaning that this model is not taking speech and converting it into text and then taking the text and putting it into the model. Like when you do that conversion, you lose information, right? Like you can pick up on my tonality and the way that I say things. If I'm saying something in an excited way, or if I'm saying something in kind of like I'm pretty sad today, kind of way, right? But when you flatten it to text, you lose a bunch of context, contextual information. And so these new like kind of omni-class models that OpenAI has been training, they have this joint kind of embedding space where you have it trained on text, but you also have it trained on audio, and you have it trained on visual information. And so it's a little bit more like the human brain in a sense where, I can take in any modality. I can even take in multiple modalities at the same time, right? I can be like walking around a beautiful park while I'm on the phone listening to you tell me about your day. Like that's audio coming in and it's visual information coming in, right? And I could even be writing like, in my notepad about something, that you're saying. I could be transcribing. And so that's text as well. And so it can take in all of these modalities kind of natively, and it can internalize the context information just like in a way a human can. It can pick up on tonality and all the nuances of speech. And then when it generates the output, the speech output, that also has like the full range of human emotion and expressiveness. So it can sing, it can laugh, it can sound sad or it can sound excited.
Is it using, so for using your example of if you're on the phone, walking in a park, seeing everything like that, is it taking all of those different inputs, or should it be taking all of those different inputs and then responding accordingly? Or is it still like isolated to like what you're saying? Just, like say it's terrible weather or it's great weather. So that would probably put you in a better mood, a human anyway.
So what's interesting is that the model's capabilities, if you look at even just the model spec, like the capabilities allow it to take in any combination of modalities. So it can take in text, it can take in audio, it can take in video, it can take in images. And it can output any combination of those modalities as well. It can output just audio, it can output text and audio, it can output audio and video, or audio and images. It doesn't do video output yet. But I think the question you bring up is really interesting because the model has these capabilities, but I think no application yet has explored those capabilities. Someone was just asking me about this the other day, like, what do you think the future is? Like, and you can talk about long-term future and humanoid robots walking around, sure. But I think in the short term, there's a really interesting aspect to this new capability, which is today you have kind of a voice mode. You have a voice mode, and then you have like, I'm a texting with ChatGPT kind of mode, right? But there are these discrete modes. Like I'm either talking to the model or I'm texting with the model, right? If I'm sitting in Cursor, like in VS Code, I'm texting with a model about what I'm programming. But like humans don't necessarily interact with each other in that way. It's much more blended. It's like when I'm pair programming with someone, we're both looking at a screen and we're talking about a piece of code and we're typing like here and there and updating or editing things. Like it's this mixed modality kind of interface that humans have with each other. And I think that, to your point, like an AI model being able to see what I'm seeing and in parallel hear what I'm hearing and kind of pick up on the nuances of how I might be feeling with the sunshine on me. And, it's a beautiful morning and I've got a matcha with me or something. And then being able to respond with that context or integrate that visual information into its responses and not just kind of isolate to the audio modality coming in and only speaking to the information it can pick up on from my voice, but incorporating the visual as well. I think we're going to start to see interfaces that do that. And the model has the capabilities of doing that. But the applications haven't yet truly explored that avenue. And they're going to in the short term. It's going to be like in the next year, we're going to see that stuff.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously possibilities are endless. You think about it from everything, even like you mentioned Her, right? The movie there, but you could think about like your Siri or Alexa or whatever at home being able to pick up on audio from you, but then using other things that it knows about your personality. Like, oh, today's weather is going to be this. Let's mitigate you feeling like dull and down or whatever. If the weather's like this, and let's start playing upbeat music, let's address it head on. Maybe you should wear this. Let's whatever it is. And then you throw in the visual aspect as well. Because there's little home robots already now that we've got, like little helpers and stuff like that. So
that's super interesting, actually. I hadn't even thought about that, but really kind of provocative. I mean, it's one thing to even just take in like the visual information that I'm seeing, but also just like contextual information about like what's happening in the world right now, right? Like, there are like 2 wars going on in the world, and that could, that's been on a lot of people's minds. Like, and I listen to the news and I've been, paying attention to that stuff, and it affects your mood, and the AI should know that, right?
It can be connected, right? It can see what you're ingesting from news, from social media, all of that stuff.
Totally.
And then be able to help you through that. It's like the natural human emotion is hard not to be affected by those things. And then you have
100%
elections coming up, or kids have just started school, or other things that have happened. Like if it knows all of that and it can be proactive.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, hugely helpful, but then I think for some people also like, whoa, a little creepy.
Yeah,
Helpful is the first thing.
it can definitely be scary. The privacy aspect of it does need to be thought through for sure. And there's probably, I think that you do arrive at some ethical questions at some point as well, but I think there's also immense value that will be added to that at the same time. So,
because it becomes a friend. I use that in the loose. I've had guests before, other clients I speak to, and it's like we will all interact with AI on a daily basis. We'll all have an AI companion at some point, in some way, shape, or form. You think about the new Meta glasses, or like the click on AI, whatever it is. We talk to Siri all the time, whatever. But then it gets to learn you and your preferences and what you like and how you're affected by news or weather or traffic or things that are going on in your life and your schedule and stuff like that, and can help.
Totally.
And it's personal.
There's this, there's a kind of a related version of this that I sometimes tell people about, which is just on kind of like the empathy side of, AI. People say, oh, like, why should you have a relationship with an AI? Like you should be talking to human beings. And I think that there's definitely a take, that's one take. But what's interesting is when voice mode first came out, I've been using it for this for ever since it first came out. But sometimes I'll be on like a long commute, and I'll put an earbud in, and just one, and I'll ask the AI, like, let's talk about like some new frontier technology. Help me understand something new. And it's like, okay, we can talk about quantum computing today. And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really understand quantum entanglement and any of this stuff. Like, let's talk about that because I want to understand that a bit better. And I have this 45-minute, hour-long conversation with an entity that doesn't judge me. I can ask it any question I want. I can get confused about anything. I don't know about you, but like I've sat in many a college auditorium where I just feel so embarrassed about asking the professor any kind of question because I assume that everybody understands it and I just don't. But that fear is not there. And I think it's going to like revolutionize education. My partner is a special needs preschool teacher. And, one of the things that we talk about a lot is how everyone, just like AI, like people are wired differently and they learn differently. And the education system is kind of this one size fits all situation because we can't really scale it out to having a personalized teacher for every single person and every single learning style. But with AI, we can. And everyone will be able to kind of get that special focused attention and non-judgment from an AI as a teacher. I think it's super powerful. It's such an amazing impact it's going to have on the world. So I'm really excited for the education part of application of this technology.
I had on the show. Are you familiar with Embodied? The robot for kids, Moxie. They make this robot. It's to help basically kids in that might be having like ADHD or sometimes it's just actually in learning as well. Now there's like the educational element of it and it incorporates ChatGPT, etc. And then I had another one on called Fawn for this, and it's a fluffy robot to help kids, neurodivergent kids, but similar sort of stuff that you're saying, because they maybe don't open up to adults or friends or teachers, but then they're able to have a voice conversation, but also text this if they're dealing with like something with a sibling or something at school. And it's
totally
huge. Like the case studies and stuff like that is so powerful. But so you just like expand that out to school in general, and everyone learns differently, like you said, but then some people are just labeled as troublesome or, oh, this kid must have ADHD, and you're just like, they just engage differently sometimes. How do you manage that?
Yeah. And then you could even scale it out to just the general population, to all of us, right? We all have our, the things that we're dealing with in our internal dialogues. And like, it's not always comfortable for the vast majority of us to share that always with people. And so being able to have, again, an entity that you can kind of confide in and talk to about it, I think that there's a really positive kind of version or take of like how AI is gonna, help there. And I think a little bit underappreciated. I think it gets lost a bit in kind of some of the dystopian angles of it, which I can understand and I can see as well. But like, I think that there is a way for this to be a huge net positive for the world. So very excited about it.
Definitely. Well, look, the company is obviously doing really well. Amazing partnerships. Obviously, we haven't spoken about all of them, but it's still fairly early, you guys haven't been around that long. You said this was an open source project during the pandemic, and that's like a short 4 years ago at most. Now that you are a thriving company, I'd say, with a very well used product and some good partnerships and like great runway, etc., how important has the team element been for you for LiveKit right now moving forward, or even from your previous experiences building companies?
It's been a huge part of, I think, our success. One interesting aspect of team that I sometimes tell people about is open source has been such a superpower in building out just an incredible team. When we launched the open source project, this was summer 2021. So the company's been around for 2 years and the whole open source project about 3. And we were only 3 people when we started launch this open source project. And very quickly, what happened was folks from just all around the world who were passionate, interested in what we were doing, amazingly talented, engineers, designers, folks, builders effectively, started to join the community, submit PRs, work on aspects to make the infrastructure better. And what we saw from that is like, well, okay, like we can see their code. This is like better than any whiteboard exercise. Like, I don't know if people do those anymore, but like it's better than any kind of like arbitrary coding exercise on a whiteboard. We can see the, code that they're writing for a real project, and they're doing it without any kind of expectation of getting paid. And they're, doing it on a weekend. It's like, the passion is there, the interest is there. And a lot of those folks, like we ended up, having them join the team, like, making an offer for them to join. And so now, like, I think, I don't actually even remember how many countries LiveKit spans. Almost by definition, we need to be an online kind of remote company just because our technology is meant to bring you closer to people across vast distances. And so, we got to be using our stuff all the time internally as well. It seems wrong. It seems wrong if we weren't. Exactly. And so we, I don't know, it's maybe like 10, 13, 14 countries, something like that. But there's people all around the world. And it's just been huge for us. Like that was people who are just experts at what we work on, and really passionate about building the infrastructure, and what it can enable. So that was a huge superpower for us on the team kind of composition standpoint. I think the other thing that is really trying to think about. Yeah, just related to the team. I mean, I think what's also interesting about open source and hiring folks or working with folks that come, from the open source community, I think another really interesting aspect of it is kind of just how independent they are. I think they're used to working on other projects, other things that they've done, posting those things to GitHub, supporting a community of users for the thing that they've built. A lot of them have that history in terms of their career, and so I think there's two really awesome benefits to it. One is that you can kind of all align on a direction, and then someone else can go and drive it and really shape it. And so that's one really awesome part. The other thing that is cool about it is it's partially due to people being from all over the world, and partially due to people being kind of like independent workers, but also independent thinkers, is you get a bunch of perspectives on how to do things, and the right way to do things, and which kinds of use cases should we double down on and lean into, and which kinds of things should we not. And I just think that like the company benefits greatly from this diversity of perspective, and that makes what we do better. Quality of it, all of that. So
very good. I was going to ask you about some of the qualities that you look for in people, but it sounds like that independence and the passion, being a self-starter, and then working autonomously, like those sound culturally like staples of the company.
Definitely. I'd say the one that is also like a staple for the company. There's two in particular. I mean, like related to kind of independent thinking is just like first principles thinking. Don't do something just because everybody else does it. Like it has to make sense from first principles. Come to the same conclusion yourself before doing what someone else has done. But I think the other part of it too that is kind of core to the company is moving fast. Not necessarily moving fast and breaking things. We're at a stage where we can't do that anymore. There's the golden period of before you launch anything, you can just break stuff left and right. It's no problem. But now that we're running kind of a pretty significant workload, I think we're doing like concurrent users at like the level of Fortnite now at scale. And so it's like, of course, aggregated across everybody that uses us, but that part's amazing, but it's also like you cannot go down, you cannot break. We have like quite a few healthcare companies or healthcare like kind of products that are built on top of us, and not even about business. It's just like I will feel like a terrible human being if someone is trying to like call their doctor because there's an emergency and LiveKit doesn't work like that. That is such a responsibility that I carry with me, and so move fast because that's the only differentiator you really have as a startup, is that you can move faster than everyone bigger than you. But yeah, we can't break things.
No.
If you haven't launched yet, go break a bunch of stuff. Enjoy that moment while you can, because eventually you can't.
Yeah, very true. Question for you, just on because I hadn't heard that about the open source project and then hiring people from that, and it makes a ton of sense, right? Ton of sense. I love it, and I'll definitely recommend it to people in the future, because I'm not a huge fan of the whole technical coding challenges and all that stuff, but honestly, most people still do it. With that mindset of having people that are working on side projects and contributing to open source and all of this stuff, but then joining a startup where you're going to be working a ton, like it's all hands on deck, you're probably doing a lot with a small team, etc. How do you balance that of still encouraging or having them work on their own side projects? Or because there's obviously benefit to them being aware of like the latest and greatest things out there, but how do you kind of balance that? And obviously there's some states where they're like, hey, you can't moonlight, you wouldn't do that in this respect.
Yeah, I my whole career, so when I worked at companies, I worked at 23andMe, I worked at Twitter, I worked all these, Twitter especially, I spent so many hours working on Twitter, for Twitter, but would always try to find the time for side projects. I mean, I've started companies in the past and have not in the same way as when I'm working at a company, but I've even worked on side projects when I've had companies of my own, and I think it is kind of about what you say. It's being able to stay current on things, being able to explore other types of ideas, and sometimes like those dots connect to back to like what you're working on, during your main hours or main project, and so I've done that my whole kind of career, and so I don't. It's not something discouraged at LiveKit. Like I would never tell someone that they can't do that. I'd probably encourage them that they should do that. In some ways, for me, it's almost like a red flag if you're not doing it. It's like you got to be just working on stuff and excited about this stuff to really kind of have an impact. There has to be a passion for it, and for just building in general, and creating things for your peers, and or for yourself. And so I think it's really important. I don't discourage it. I definitely, probably the opposite, encourage it here. And I think that the way that we kind of set up expectations is not that you're going to be working for like X hours per day, or the way that we want to move fast. And so we do that effectively by like setting deadlines. It's like, hey, look, and not a setting deadline, like going and saying, hey, get this done by tomorrow. It's more like, okay, let's think aggressively. When do we think we could get this done by? And try to set like an aggressive target and hit it. And once we have alignment on that, if you're executing against that plan and shipping like at the time that we want to, agree that we should, work on whatever you want.
I love that. I mean,
okay.
That's culturally, I'm obviously harping on the cultural point, but I think it's so important that companies are clear on their culture and their expectations, but also if you're a fully remote or distributed team, that everyone is aligned with that way of work, way of thinking, and cultural side of it. Because what you're saying is you hire professionals and adults and you entrust them. Like, it doesn't matter when you work, how you work, whatever. If you've got work to do, you have a deadline, we agree on it, get it done, and you can do whatever else you want to do. You want to be playing basketball at lunchtime, cool, go and do your thing, but get the stuff done. Whatever
brings you joy, or what your passion is, go for it. Like, you should definitely do that. Like, life is short, so yeah, indulge in that. Totally.
Right. Well, look, thank you so much for this. Before we get to wrap up, a couple of things. Is there anything that you can share in terms of like future projects, areas of exploration, things like that LiveKit's looking at or targeting that we should keep an eye out on?
Let's see. In a general sense, I think what we're really excited about, what we're passionate about, is that the nature of computing is changing, right? AI is only going to get better. There's nothing I can do to change. I think it's a good thing for the world, but I don't think there's anything I can do to stop it or slow it down, even if I wanted to. That's going to happen. And I think that our relationship with computers is going to change dramatically. And a large part of it is going to be the models itself. But then there's a whole bunch of infrastructure around the model, both to give information to the model and to give the model access to information that you do not need statistical computing for. You can write procedural code for, you can build traditional software to make some of those flows easier for the AI model to hook into. And we're going to be exploring all of those things. Like, we're very customer driven. So like we have a product today, it's being used quite widely, and we hear a lot about other things that can be made easier as part of not just working with LiveKit, but with other pieces that are kind of around LiveKit as well. kind of between LiveKit and the model itself. And so you're going to see us kind of over time become more and more of like an AI infrastructure company. And so I know that's a bit vague and non-specific, but that's what you'll see happen. We're really excited about it.
Good. And for our entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs that listen to the show, is there any piece of advice or wisdom that you can give to them about starting innovative companies, or even just tech companies in general? We've obviously done this several times.
Yeah. We could probably do an entire episode on this. I got a lot of learnings after starting, 5 companies and joining maybe another 4 or so of those as well, and spending time in somebody else's company. If I were to boil it down to like one thing that I've learned, or that is my guiding principle kind of now for how, coming up with new ideas and going after them and choosing the right ones to go after, it is have a strong opinion on where the world is going in a very general sense, and then just go build value to move the world in that direction. You don't have to worry too much about where the ship is turned, like, whether it's this many degrees or this many degrees, like in kind of I don't know anything about, boats. So I'm like, this analogy is kind of breaking down a little bit, but the point being, like, figure out where land is in a general sense and just kind of sail in that direction. Don't worry too much about whether you're pointed, directly straight line to that land, or whether you're kind of off by a bit, and maybe it's going to take you an hour or two to course correct. Don't worry about that part. Like, have an opinion on where everything is going in a very general kind of far out sense, and then just go and build value for an audience, for a user, for a customer in that direction. And just stay light-footed. Be ready to kind of move a little bit with the wind, and have the passion to continue doing it for a long enough period of time, and you will hit the land, eventually. So I know it's a bit kind of philosophical, but it is my guiding principle.
Yeah, I love that. It's also, it kind of reminds me of the visual, the meme that has the straight line arrow of whether it's success or your plan or whatever. And then underneath it has what reality really looks like. And it's up, down, left, right, like crashing. And you eventually can get there, but you just have to keep going in that direction with the viewpoint. And
totally. I mean, one last thing I'll share on this is that when we started LiveKit, when we were going to raise our first round, we put out the open source project and it was starting to take off, and we started to have conversations with venture VCs, and what we were talking about during we were sitting in the pandemic, and everybody wanted to put audio and video on the internet and all of that stuff. And one of the things that we said to the VCs when we were in this pitch was okay, yes, everybody wants to build audio and video types of experiences right now. We're all stuck at home, all of that stuff. But where this is actually going is there's going to be humanoid robots walking around one day, and they're all going to have cameras on them and microphones and other types of sensors. And they're going to need infrastructure to be able to send that data to a place where it's recorded for auditing, or being able to use an AI model to help it navigate a path. There's going to be real-time computing is going to be everywhere in the future. The internet's not going to get slower. It's only going to get faster. The ability to connect with a machine or connect with another human being is only the world's only going to get more collaborative and more connected, not less connected. And that's more of a macro view that informed why would we even go and work on LiveKit in the first place. Yes, there are ways that we could make money in the short term, but that's not really what was the motivating force behind why start this thing. It was where we saw this future and where it was going to go, and we were just going to stay light on our feet and be able to kind of, nudge ourselves left or right as the world started to change and some of these futuristic things that we were describing at the time began to emerge. And so that's just like a very, tangible example like of this kind of taking this philosophy and how it can guide you on your entrepreneurial journey.
Love that. I think that is a great note to end on. Yeah. Thank you so much for your insights, Russ. Thank you for being on the show, sharing all of this. For the listeners that are interested, where can they find you and LiveKit and keep up to date with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can go to our website, livekit.io, but, if you want to actually connect with a human face, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at DSA, short username, the benefits of working at the company pretty early. And you can also find me in our Slack community, livekit.io/join-Slack. My username in there is also at DSA. So if you ever want to talk or bounce ideas, hit me up.
Perfect. Well, everyone heard it here. We'll put the links in the show notes as well. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciated the conversation.
Pleasure.